IWDA versus VWCE, once and for all, two of the most popular ETFs in Belgium. Let's see which one wins. So I'm Thomas, I co-founded a fintech, I also wrote a book on ETF investing in Belgium, and here's the honest answer up front. Both of the funds are excellent. This isn't a one fund ETF is secretly bad video, it's a here's exactly which one fits for you video, and by the end, hopefully you'll know which one to pick. We wrote a guide that looks at the differences between IWDA and VWCE, so let's take a look at it. One structural difference between both ETFs. So if we look firstly at what is VWCE, VWCE is very popular in the sense it was one of the first ones that was really pushed by the index investing community and passive investors. The fund was actually launched in 2019 by Vanguard, and it holds more than 5 billion euros under management. And so one of its founders is actually Jack Bogle of Vanguard, and he's often credited as the inventor of the index fund. And so this fund was created by Vanguard. It grew massively. And what it does is that it tracks the FTSE All-World Index. So that's a combination of the FTSE developed markets and the FTSE emerging markets. So essentially you own over 4,000 stocks. And because it's so diversified, investors can actually find in VWCE a great way to follow the global stock market because you hold such a big portion of the world's stocks. So we're talking about companies like Apple, Microsoft, and they're often represented in the index. And so if we see as a comparison, IWDA, it's actually also a global ETF, but it tracks the MSCI World Index. And that's composed of about 1,500 companies from 23 countries that the economists qualify as developed. So we're talking about the US, Germany, Japan. The fund is actually offered by iShares, so that's a brand of BlackRock. And BlackRock, I think, is one of the biggest asset managers in the world now. It's got over $2 trillion invested. And the returns, obviously, of IWDA have been excellent. So let's take a look at that. If we go to Backtest, you can actually see the comparison between IWDA and VWCE, and you can see that essentially it's a pretty similar pattern in terms of their performance. If invested 1,000 euros from the start, you can see that the net asset value is extremely close, and so the compound annual growth rate as well. So you can actually go to Backtest and then get deeper into the comparisons between both funds. So you can actually check, the maximum drawdown period, the maximum loss in a year. You can also compare it with other portfolios, so take a look at the backtest. But you can see that essentially performance is the same. So how do we differ between both ones, and how do you know which one to pick then? So let's go through some of the differences between VWCE and IWDA. And so obviously on the resource, we look at the performance. We looked at that through backtest, diversification, the cost of funds, taxes, broker fees, replication. If each ETF, which one is best suited for monthly investing, the size of the funds, and if they do any sustainability, and also the governance of the fund provider. So we know through backtest that the performance is tied. However, for diversification, so VWC is more diversified because you get over 4,000 stocks, while the MSCI World is only composed of 1,500 stocks, so it's not as much. The cost of the funds, actually, IWDA wins on that. So that's the yearly fee that you pay. It's often known as the total expense ratio, which is the TER. And so in terms of IWDA, it's at 0.2% per year. And then for VWC, it's at 0.22%. In terms of the taxes, this is a big one. So what happens is that you have to pay a stock transaction tax for every time that you purchase or sell an ETF. And this is the big difference, is that the Belgian stock transaction tax for VWCE is 1.32%, whereas for IWDA it's 0.12%. And so that's actually a big difference for every time you buy and you sell. Otherwise, they're pretty identical. They're both accumulating funds. This means that you don't pay any dividend taxes, automatically reinvested in the funds. They're both domiciled in Ireland, and then obviously they both invest in stocks. In terms of the broker fees, it's pretty much tied. It depends on your broker. IWDA wins slightly because there's a few more exchanges, so there are cheaper transaction costs, but you can check out the resource for that. They're both physically replicated. The size of the funds are pretty tight. There's no sustainability on each one. And then the governance of the fund provider, well, like I said in the intro, Vanguard is huge, BlackRock is huge, so you're pretty okay. In terms of comparing them, they're very, very similar funds. And so it's very difficult to choose one big winner. I would say that you have to take the one that you feel most comfortable with. And also, if you want more diversification, then I would go with VWCE. However, with the TOB rate higher, maybe it makes more sense to get IWDA. You can, of course, combine them, so you can get another fund like EMIM, which is the emerging markets of the MSCI world. So essentially, you can get a larger diversification and global performance. So yeah, that kind of sums up both of them together. As you've noticed from the video, I've said quite a few times that it depends on your broker. And so I think in my next video, I really want to look at the best brokers in Belgium. I'm talking about Bolero versus Giro versus Trade Republic, Me Direct, Saxo. There are so many different brokers available to you in Belgium. So I'm going to record a video that kind of goes deeper on them. As always with this video, none of this is personal advice. It's just what I've learned. So it's up to you to make your own call. I hope you found it enjoyable, and of course please click subscribe so you can stay in touch for future updates and future videos. If you want me to cover any other topics, please leave a comment, and yeah, take a look at the resource, play around with backtest, and then hopefully you can choose the right ETF for you.